What's up, Churchy? Hey, Mike. Can you hear me? Oh, hey, Kyle.
Oh, gee. Look who's here already. Gosh, you guys.
We're just so excited to be listening to you.
Yeah. Robert's iPad. Oh, gosh.
He can't talk. Don't let him talk.
Oh, okay. All right. This. This. Dan, how's night school going?
Night school was good last night. We went through 6.3.
Okay.
I finally got it.
What,
After 8 years.
huh?
After 8 years, I got it.
What's 6.3?
6.3 is the ball,
Oh, substituted ball.
substituted ball, wrong ball,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Craig Winter was talking to us, and he goes, if you think about it, is the balls turned on or turned off? And it was like, oh my God, the lights just went on. I get it, right? You know, it was, he's always talking about, you know, when do you finally get some of these things?
Right.
It's like, yeah, I get it now. Now you're talking. Turn it on, turn it off.
Yep. Yeah,
When's
that's
the ball in play, when the ball not in play.
right.
It was good. But the whole class last week was real good.
Uh-huh.
We had
Nice.
Jesse Barge from the PGA, and then Craig was our instructor for the whole week.
Okay, nice.
Kind of nice when you have the guy that actually helped write the rules.
Right.
He was involved on that team that actually wrote, you know, that were writing the rules with the RNA, and
Yeah.
it was
Craig.
very
Craig
cool.
was. Yeah. Not that Craig that's saying he's Mary and waving, but
Oh, Craig / Mary.
yeah.
Hi, Lee.
There's Mary.
It's actually Mary / Craig. She's the better half.
Good morning, all.
True. Yeah.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning.
Mike, you have a question for the day?
Do I have a question?
Robert, do you have a question?
Wait a minute.
I thought you'd have a question.
Robert or Mike?
Well, Robert's iPad.
I am using an iPad for the first time. I'm up with the kids still. No, I don't have a question. I don't know if
Okay.
I don't know if I'd fix a
Come visit us.
embedded ball
Kids still.
mark, but other than that, we can leave that alone.
That'll be a 2023 change, Mike.
Yeah. Just like my taking relief and the ball goes forward when you can do back online relief.
Yeah. Yeah. You're ahead of your time. So,
Yeah, I'm way ahead. That's the trouble. I got to get back.
Was here before.
Now, there's also an interesting interpretation of in Rule 12 when you're taking relief outside the bunker, taking back on line relief 2 strokes.
Yeah.
You get to rake the bunker, which is in your line of play.
Yep.
So a similar application, I would say.
Well, I still don't understand the embedded ball rule in the face of the bunker when it's not in the sand, and why you're being penalized if you can't find anything close in the general area. So you're being double penalized.
Well, I mean, you hit the bad shot to get in that place in the first place. So you can't forget that.
Well, first of all, I never hit it that hard, so.
And it's got to go in the air too, Mike.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. That's another rule that I get on my buddies.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like. I think it doesn't happen that much where it would. I mean, because I guess you always have the option to go back under stroke and distance, and that maybe is not 100% quote unquote fair in that situation, but I mean,
Right.
it typically doesn't come up that often. At least over here, because there's just not a lot of dirt faces like that.
You know, the
The
one that
Gales.
a little bit, Kyle, is Meadowbrook now with all that tall grass in their face of their bunkers.
Hmm.
You know, some of those things almost become unplayable.
Right.
It's embedded too. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, you could have the who was it JB Holmes last year at, I think it was at Riviera, maybe it wasn't at Riviera, but I thought it was, where he had the embedded ball and it was in the rough. I think that was last year at Riviera, but
How come my name's Robert? What? Oh, hang on. I got.
I don't know, you have to ask your parents on that one.
I know. I'm using my iPad because I'm out of town or out of.
Churchy,
Yeah,
where are you?
I'm right here. Oh, where am I? No, I'm up in Fort Gratiot. I had to repaint one of my granddaughter's bedroom walls.
Oh,
Yeah, but I'm done.
Hey, Mike, this is Beecroft. We need a bathroom painted if you're not doing anything this afternoon.
Hey, John,
What?
let me call you on this one. I don't want to send it out loud.
Hey,
Ah, come on.
Jeepers.
hey, you can come visit us if you're bored.
Good morning, everybody.
Yeah, I'm not that bored, Marilyn.
Ah, come on.
Yes.
That's not nice.
Well,
Marvin, are you trying to keep up with Al Roker with those blue, purple pieces on?
No, he did have him first, though. That's right. That's where I got the idea and found them.
It makes you look a lot smarter too.
I am smarter.
Marv,
right.
was that an interpretation question?
No,
Okay.
Back from that guy.
Lynn, I understand that you're gonna get a remodel at the course?
Well, we're catching up with the master plan that we've had. And so, yes, there will be some changes, but it's all been in the master plan that we didn't implement, quite a few of the items several years ago, but got a little bit of money now and we're doing the sprinkler system and, we're looking at the implications to the sprinkler systems, and then might as well make sure we have the sprinklers in the right spot when we go through a lot of the revisions they're talking about for bunkers and some of the other areas that we have. So,
And who's doing it?
pardon?
Who is coming in to do the work? Designer?
We're still in negotiations with the designers, so, you know, the work is down the road for a while.
Oh, okay. Well, that's exciting.
Yeah. Looks like you guys are watching it on, you know, what, the internet, and I think Mr. Dooling posted that announcement, and
Yeah, I think I saw it on
a lot of
Twitter. Yep.
people in the golf committee didn't even know it. So, you know, it's just communications are, you know, are definitely important.
All right, I think we're gonna go ahead and get started here. I think we'll probably have a few people join in as we get started, but we'll go ahead. I think everyone knows now just the whole mute thing and unmute thing. If we do hear any background noises or anything, we will mute you. But please, if you're not talking, you can mute yourself in the lower left corner, and then unmute yourself when you want to ask a question or make a comment.
Muted.
So, all right. So today we're going to cover rules 10, 11, and 12, hopefully, and we'll get through as much as we can. So for rule 10, it's preparing for and making a stroke, advice and help, and then also caddies. So some of the stuff that we'll talk about in this rule, specifically around caddies, is going to obviously depend on if the tournament has caddies or not. And we'll go through some examples of events that have caddies and some that don't. So that for some of you that are new, you're aware of which ones have caddies and which ones don't. So the purpose statement in Rule 10 covers how to prepare for and make a stroke, including advice and other help that the player may get from others, including caddies. The underlying principle is that golf is a game of skill and personal challenge. All right. All right, so making a stroke. So Rule 10.1 covers how to make a stroke and several acts that are prohibited in doing so. The definition of a stroke is made by fairly striking at a ball with the head of the club. Okay, and then again, the fundamental challenge is to direct and control the movement of the entire club by freely swinging the club without anchoring it. So we'll talk about anchoring and what is not allowed under anchoring, what is defined as anchoring, and there's certain parameters, and there's a good picture in the rule book that will kind of give us some indication as to what is anchoring and what isn't. So in order to make a stroke, there needs to be intent behind the stroke. So the player needs to fairly strike the ball with the head of the club such that there is only momentary contact between the club and the ball, and they can't push it or scrape it. So if you're up against an out of bounds fence or you have a very limited backswing and you're trying to move the ball, we need to be careful that the golfer isn't scooping it or scraping it out. So if you're in a situation like that and you see someone have a very, very limited backswing, you just have to be very careful that they're not scooping it out, and make sure the player knows that they can't scoop it and they need to actually strike the ball in those cases. One of the changes for the rules in 2019 was that if we do have a player that accidentally hits the ball more than once, there's no longer a penalty stroke for that. There's just one stroke, and we're going to count just that one stroke. So that famous double chip that happened at I think it was the '86 U.S. Open at Oakland Hills. Now, if that happened this year, would only be one stroke. And typically, the rationale behind that is that usually when someone accidentally hits the ball twice, it's usually not a good shot. So we're not going to penalize them for that. But I'm sure all of you, when these rules first came out, if you remember, there were these videos where you had people purposely hitting the ball twice to get around a tree or something like that. So just keep in mind that this is for accidental only. If you purposely hit it twice, then that's a different story. All right, anchoring the club. So the player must not anchor the club either directly by holding the club or gripping or a gripping hand against any part of the body, except that the player may hold the club or a gripping hand against a hand or forearm. Okay, so we'll show you some pictures shortly about what that looks like. And then you can't indirectly through the use of an anchor point by holding a forearm against any part of the body to use a gripping hand as a stable point around which the other hand may swing the club. Okay, but if the player's club, hand, or forearm merely touches his or her body or clothing during the stroke without being held against it, there is no breach of the rule. Okay, so if I'm just putting and I just hold my forearms and they touch my body when I'm putting, that's okay, but I can't anchor it it in. And then this is an important piece here. So when we talk about the forearm, we mean the part of the arm below the elbow joint, and it includes the wrist. So if you see in the picture here, this picture in the top left, we have the golfer who has that up against their forearm and the wrist, but that's not anchoring because it is below the elbow joint. Okay, so that's, you'll see on tour, you'll see some players use this. Matt Kuchar putts like that. I mean, I don't know, maybe he does. I haven't seen him play this year, but historically he's putted like that. And again, it's okay provided that that stays below his elbow. And then you'll have the other allowed option that is right below it. And that's when you can still have that stroke or that hand that's holding up top in a separated grip, but you can't have it be attached or anchored to your body. So this is what Bernhard Langer says he does. On the right is what he actually does. I'm just kidding. But so on his left, you'll see Bernhard Langer do this a lot, where he has that stroke, but he keeps it outside. And again, when we go back to this statement here, it says, merely touching the clothing during the stroke. So a lot of times you'll see when he takes his stroke, it hits his shirt because it's coming down, and so that's not a problem. It's only going to be a problem if he has his hand anchored into his stomach or his chest, like that picture in the bottom right there. And then likewise, you can't put the butt of the grip there in your stomach when you're putting as well. That would be considered anchoring the club. I'm not going to show you this video, but if anyone wants to see another example of something that's not anchoring, because I think most of you have seen this over the years, but this gator clamp here is something that is allowed. And one of the guys that is a golf instructor, he's probably most famously known for losing against Tiger in the USAM at Pumpkin Ridge, but he's a well-known instructor, and he has this little thing that he came up with for people like me that can't putt without some kind of help. So if you're interested in seeing that, you can search gator clamp, or I'll we'll if you can't find the link, let us know. We'll be happy to share it with you. All right, any questions about anchoring before we move? We don't really see a ton of that at our level. I'm sure there are some seniors, but typically, usually once the USGA and the RNA prohibited that, whatever, 5-6 years ago, whenever it was, that we really saw that kind of go away for the most part, except for a few people here or there. All right, making a stroke while standing across or on the line of play. So a player must not make a stroke from a stance with a foot deliberately placed on each side of, or with either foot deliberately touching the line of play or an extension of that line behind the ball. Okay, but for this rule only, the line of play does not include a reasonable distance on either side. So basically what this is saying is that we can't purposely stand astride is another term that you typically see. But you can't purposely can't do that when making a stroke, except if you're doing it to avoid another player's line of play, which you typically see that quite a bit when they're trying to tap in around the hole or whatever. That happens a lot. So the player can't purposely do this, but if they're doing it to just to avoid another player's stance, or sorry, another player's line, then it's okay. And I guess the other thing too is if it's accidental, it's okay too. But typically, if someone does, it's going to be purposeful. All right, playing a moving ball. So we had some questions about this, and I think we have a good understanding. But again, a player must not make a stroke at a moving ball, and a ball is moving when it's not at rested spot. Sometimes it can be what they say wobbling or oscillating. If it's the ball is wobbling or oscillating, it's deemed or it's treated to be at rest and it's not a moving ball. There are a couple exceptions where there is no penalty potentially. Well, where there is no penalty all the times with one minor exception to that. So the ball begins to move only after playing, only after the player begins a backstroke or backswing for their stroke. Then that's covered by a different rule. And what if we remember from that from a few weeks ago, is that is typically not a penalty, but if the player has caused the ball to move, then the player is going to get a penalty in that case. On the tee, if the ball falls off and we make a stroke, we're not going to have a penalty there. We're just going to play the ball as it lies. And then if the ball is moving in water, whether it's temporary water or water in a penalty area, the player may make a stroke if the ball is moving, or they can take relief and may lift the moving ball. And then in either case, with the ball moving in water, the player can't wait there to see if the wind or the water current moves the ball to a better place. They need to act right away and can't unreasonably delay play there. Yep.
If the ball falls off the tee, if you accidentally touch it with your club, you're allowed to replace the ball on the tee, I believe, aren't you?
Correct. Yep. So if you, as long as you're not making a stroke at it, and it's on the tee, you can pick that up and put it back. No problem. No problem there.
Yeah.
And that kind of, same. I think it happened. Maybe it was. I don't know if it was this year. Maybe it was this year at the Masters. I think it was the Masters. Zach Johnson had the practice swing on the tee. Some of you probably remember that, where he wasn't trying to hit the ball, but he did on his practice swing. And since he was in the teen area, he was okay to pick it up and play again without penalty. Different answer to that question if you're in the fairway or in the general area.
Kyle?
All right. Yeah.
If a player intends to hit a ball on the tee and comes through and misses the ball, but just enough and knocks it off the tee, and the ball lands on the tee, do they have to play it as it lies, or can they re-tee the ball at that point? I know it's one stroke at that point because they intended to hit the ball, but can they re-tee it, or do they have to hit it off the tee on the ground?
So if the ball's still in the teen area, they can pick it up and re-tee it in that case.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you talking about when the player has made a stroke at the ball?
Yes, Marv, if they intend to hit the ball and say they just whiff by it and it just goes a couple of feet from the tee, they do hit it, but they don't make a good contact and it falls off the tee or comes off the tee and is still in the teeing area.
They can replace it for one stroke for unplayable. It's stroking distance rather.
No, no. Mark,
Otherwise-
no, he's
That's
not
correct.
saying that.
If the stroke, the player made a stroke at the ball, right?
That's a
Right.
stroke. If the ball lies in the teeing area, it is not in play until a stroke has been made at it, even if a stroke has previously been made at it.
So I think this was a rule change, in that if the ball remains in that teeing area, you can pick it up and you can re-tee it.
But the ball has to be in the teeing area.
In the teeing area, not on the tee box. So it has to be within that 2 club lengths from where the front of the tee marker is back. If it's in there, you can pick it up and you can re-tee it.
Okay, that's good. That's what I was saying. Yeah.
And then in that case, for Bill, for your example, that golfer would be hitting 2.
Correct. All right. All right.
Is that,
Thank you.
is
That's
that
what I-
player then hitting 2 off the tee?
Yes.
Huh?
There's
Is that player then hitting 2 off the tee?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And you'd like when I first heard about that, I was like, oh, that'll never happen. But I'm not gonna reveal
You
what
haven't
happened.
taken me off yet.
But I have seen it happen in person in 2021. So it's possible. I'll leave it at that.
It could hit a tree as an example and come right back at you, back into the teeing area. And if it's in the teeing area, you can replace that ball on the tee and hit it again, hitting 2 with no penalty, correct?
Correct. Yes. Mhm. This person did not hit the tree and it came back.
He said it has to be within the teeing area, not on the tee, on the teeing area, which means between those 2 things and 2 club lengths back. So if it went forward,
If it's outside the teeing area, then you can't.
no, but I mean, if it's still on the tee pad, but in front of those
Okay.
markers.
Back on the team.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's right, Malins. If you top it and hit a crappy shot 10 yards forward, you can't pick it up and tee it there. Only within the teeing area.
Okay, but I was, because at one point you said teeing area was only from the tee markers and 2 club lengths.
Correct.
I said if it went forward, it's not in that.
Right. Yep.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Mute.
All right. 10.2 advice and other help. So again, this rule, one of the things we talk about is a fun, like how the USGA and RNA is a fundamental challenge to the game is to be able to play the game for the player, make the stroke without any artificial help, and also decide the strategy and tactics for your play. So there are limits to the advice and other help the player may get during a round. During a round, a player must not give advice to anyone in the competition who is playing on the course. Okay, again, the key is during a round here. Okay, so before a round, after a round, it's a whole different ball game. And then the player can also not ask advice for anyone for advice other than the player's caddy. Okay, and then they also cannot touch another player's equipment to learn information that would be advice if given or asked by the player. So the example they give here is such as touching the other player's clubs or bag to see what club is being used. So if I look into someone's bag and see that the 8-iron is gone, that's okay. But if I move the 7-iron to make sure that the 8-iron isn't there, then I've got an issue there. And then again, this does not apply before a round. So before a round, you can get as much advice as you like. It also doesn't include when play is stopped. Okay, so typically if we have like a rain delay and we're all in the clubhouse pre-COVID, caveat, and we had the players are sitting around and they're talking, they at that point in time they can talk about whatever they want. There doesn't need to be any issues about them sharing advice or whatever. They can do that freely during a suspension of play. And then the other thing to keep in mind with advice as well is that when you're dealing with team or partner play, the same rule applies for your partner and your partner's caddy. And then in some team play, you'll have what the rules call it, an advice giver, that will be identified by the committee that can give advice to someone that might not be their caddy or whatever. So typically that's a coach for a college or a high school event, or like we talked about before, Ryder Cup, where they have a captain, or Solheim Cup or something like that. All right, so what is advice? Advice is any verbal comment or action, such as showing what club was just used to make a stroke, that is intended to influence a player in either choosing the club, making a stroke, or deciding how to play during the round. Okay, so if they influence a player in any of those three manners, then it's going to be defined as advice and will have a penalty. However, advice doesn't include public information, such as the location of things on the course, the putting green, the fairway, the penalty areas, or where another player's ball's at, the distance from one point to another, or the rules. So if we're standing on the tee and I say, "Hey Marv, is there a bunker out there on the right side of the hole?" You know, he can answer that question, not a problem. If I say, "Hey Marv, how far is it from here to the bunker?" he can answer that question as well. A lot of times people will have rangefinders to get that information, but that's all public information that can be shared. But what I can't do is I can't ask someone who might know about the course and say, "Hey, is the right side or the left side of the fairway better here?" And if I ask that question, I'm going to get a penalty. And if the player answers that question, they're going to get a penalty. And then when it comes to the rules, people can ask about the rules. But again, I always tell people that, just be careful who you listen to, because if the person that you're playing with or the spectator or whoever tells you wrong information, you're not going to be absolved under the rules of golf. So just make sure if you are getting information from someone else, or players are getting information, that they actually know what they're talking about. So I've seen that end poorly. So just be careful about that as well. The other thing too, just again, like when we're helping players with the rules, and we talked about this before too, like if we're giving the player relief from the penalty area, we can't tell the player which option they should use. We just give the players the options. So we wouldn't give them all the options and then say, well, in this case, you're probably going to be best off if you take your lateral relief or your 2 club lengths. Like, we just want to give them their options and let the players decide. We can't tell them which option they should use. All right, pointing out the line of play for the ball anywhere on the putting green. So a player can have their ball or their line of play pointed out. However, the person or the object needs to move before they hit the shot. So a very common example of this is if you have like a big hill and there's a blind shot maybe to the green or to the next landing zone, and you'll have your caddy or another player in the group go up to the top of the hill and say, "Okay, here's where you want to aim." That's fine as long as that caddy or that other player moves before you hit. They could also place a towel there on the ground or something like that, but that towel will need to be moved before you play your shot. Okay, so that's fairly common, but again, they need to move. If they don't move, then we're going to have an issue there. We'll have a penalty. And then on the green, it's very similar, except that you cannot set an object down on the green. So if I have a bottle of water, I can't put the bottle of water, let go of it, and leave it. I can hold the bottle of water and touch the green. I can touch the green with my hand to point out where my player should hit or where I should hit, or my partner or whatever. But I can't put something down and leave it there. Once I do that, we've got a penalty. And then we also, I think this might be in a later one, but we also can't purposely put other objects, maybe not necessarily on the green, but beyond the green as a point to help line up or anything like that. So if I have that water bottle and I put it in the fringe and I say, aim at that water bottle, and I purposely put it there to serve as an aiming point, then we're going to have an issue there. But if there just happens to be a spectator standing there, and you'll see this on TV a lot too, where you'll hear the banter back and forth between the caddy and the player, and you say, aim at that guy in the red shirt. That spectator's there, like they weren't purposely put there to help out, so not a problem using them to help line up in that case. And then the only exception to this is that if the caddy is attending the flag stick, the caddy can stand in a location on or close to the player's line of play to attend the flag stick. Hopefully I don't have to cover flag stick. I hate the rule flag stick.
Kyle,
Yeah.
just a clarification on the putting.
Mm-hmm.
If a player is on the putting green is in his or her putting stance, ready to address the ball, and the caddy is still behind him, if the caddy then moves, the player must also move before he strikes the ball. Correct?
Yep. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yes, yeah, that's correct. If the player wants to avoid a penalty, they'll need to back off there in that example.
Yes. Okay. Thanks.
Yep. Okay. We also now we cannot place a object down on the ground to help a player take their stance. So previously you could put that club down to line you up, but now you cannot put that down provided that you take a stance. I think last year, one of the years, or we had some discussion on this, but basically what it's just saying is that you can't put that object down and help take a stance. But if I put the same club down on the ground and I stood behind it, I could do that, but I can't do it when I'm taking my stance. And then as Leroy was saying about the restriction on the caddy standing behind the player, when the player begins to take their stance for the stroke and until the stroke is made, the player's caddy must not deliberately stand in a location on or close to an extension of the line of play behind the ball for any reason. Okay, and then this part here, this last part here is so when this first came out, for those of you that remember, it was in certain places you could back off and avoid penalty. In certain places you can't. It was an automatic penalty. But then a couple of things happened on the PGA Tour, and they changed that. So now the rule is, as Leroy said, is that if a player does take their stance and their caddy, and then also keep in mind too with this is that the caddy and the partner's caddy are all the same here. So if I'm playing a 4-ball, my partner can't do these things as well. So if my partner in a 4-ball is standing behind me when I take my stance or when I start to take my stance, begin to take my stance, if I hit that shot and don't back off, I'm going to get a penalty. Okay. There is one exception that if it's accidental, then there's no issue. But typically it's not accidental. So in that case, we just need the player to back off and then the caddy to move, or the partner to move off to the side, and then the player can retake their stance. So I think for the most part, the caddies and players know this rule now, but it's still something to be aware of, especially if you are dealing with certain events that we do allow caddies. So we allow caddies for and someone needs to correct me if I'm wrong here, but we allow caddies for the men's and women's amateur, as well as the men's and the women's GAM championship. And then certain select USGA qualifiers. So for those events that we do allow caddies. You know, the caddy ranges from anyone from the boyfriend or girlfriend to the mom, the dad, to someone that is maybe that missed a cut and is a player. So the level of knowledge of these caddies can vary drastically from one event to another. So it's always helpful, especially with our starters on those first days of these events, that they make sure they go over with caddies, especially this thing that they can't do, so that we don't get in a situation where we're having to judge whether that player or that caddy was on the line extended behind the player.
That's especially true, I think, in qualifiers too, where maybe both the caddy and the player aren't quite at the top level of efficiency and expertise.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I know you're right, because all the qualifiers that we do for the men's and the men's AM and the GAM championship, we have 800-ish people. So it's a lot of uninformed players in that group of 800 for sure.
Kyle,
Yeah.
under 10.2B number 3, you've got change there. And I'm not sure that refers to the caddy behind the player. I think that's referring to setting down an object. Has that been changed, or?
Yeah, so, well, at least my understanding is that under the old rules, you could play, you could take your stance, put the club down. I'm looking down at my stance when I do this, but you can lay the club down, but now you cannot do that.
Okay, what does change mean on that? Is that just a change from the?
It just means that it changed in 2019.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yep. All right, Craig, is this better?
Yeah, that's fine.
Good. All right. And then again, it's always important, especially for those of you that play in events at your courses and your clubs, like that people understand that this applies for partner events as well. So a lot of times people think that this rule only applies to caddies, but it applies to partners as well. If you're running an event that like a scramble, where standing behind the player is like kind of built into the culture of a scramble, you can make special rules for a scramble. Scramble made its first appearance in USGA publications for the first time in 2019. If you want to see what they have to say about a scramble, go to page 510 in the big book. There's not much info in there, but at least it's mentioned. One of these days it'll be like the most reference form of play. One of these days. So, all right. So there is a clarification on this exception here. So for those of you, let me just move this over here. So for those of you that haven't seen or heard about these clarifications, so the USGA has a list of clarifications that they have on their website that are basically it's an addendum to the rules. So these are basically things that they've added or changed since the rules were written in 2019. So one of the things that they have changed here is this exception here. And did I skip it? Geez, where it is? What was it? Okay, yeah. So this clarification was just the one that was put in play after that PGA Tour event. So I think it's this one right here. So it talks about when the player begins taking their stance. And again, that was added. You'll see here that this was added in February, and I think it was after the waste management event where there was a few players that got caught up in a quote unquote rules controversy there. So, but if you're looking to get some more information about the rules or want to confuse yourself even more than you're getting confused right now, go to the USGA website and look at their clarifications, and there are some good ones in there. We'll actually talk about one or two other ones here in a little bit. So. All right, and then this here is just to clarify again, like when the player is on the line, if you have your book in paper, this image is wrong. So because they change because of that clarification, the caddy could still be on the line, but as long as the player backs off and the caddy moves off to the side, there's no penalty now. Okay, it's another benefit of having the app on your phone. Because all these references that are outdated or clarifications are embedded in there, whereas they're not in the printed book. But still have both. I would recommend, but it's good to have the app as well. All right, players also cannot get protection from the elements, so they can't get that from his or her caddy or any other person. And the caddy cannot put an object deliberately positioned to get protection from sun, rain, wind, or other elements. So again, this is it says a player must not make a stroke. So prior to the stroke being made, it's okay. You'll see that a lot if it's raining out. If you're watching professional tours, you'll see the caddies holding the umbrellas over the players as they're making their practice strokes or practice swings. I don't know about you guys, but I cringe every time I watch those because I fear that the caddy's not going to move in time because they like wait until the very last second before they move, and the player's gonna get a penalty. But most of the caddies move. There's a few that learn the hard way, but they can do that prior to them hitting the stroke. Then the rule doesn't prohibit the player from doing that. So if the player wanted to hold the umbrella in one hand and make a putt with the other, that's not a problem. And you might see that on short putts or something like that. So then we get back to this whole advice, rule 10.2 advice. Anytime we have that, it's going to be the general penalty. So keep in mind that for the general penalty, that is a 2-stroke penalty in stroke play or a loss of hole in match play. All right. Any questions on advice before we move on? Okay. All right, 10.3, caddies. So the player may have a caddy. Like I said, in certain events, we don't allow caddies in all events, but the player may have a caddy to carry the player's clubs and give advice and other help during the round. But there are limits to what the caddy is allowed to do. The player is responsible for the caddy's actions during the round and will get a penalty if the caddy breaches the rules. Okay, so if you're going to have a caddy, make sure they are somewhat knowledgeable about the rules. And then the caddy is someone who helps with carrying, transporting, or handling clubs. So a person that does that either by carrying or by cart or by trolley, or handles the player's clubs is the player's caddy, even if not named as the caddy by the player, except when done to move the player's clubs, bag, or cart out of the way as a courtesy. So you'll see that sometimes too, where you might have a spectator or someone move a bag out of the way because it's in the way of another player and the player's in the bathroom or something like that. Not a problem there. And then the caddy can give advice, but there are restrictions on that advice in what's sorry, there are there are some restrictions on the advice, but not many. The player's caddy is the only person, other than the partner's caddy, that a player can ask for advice. And then there's some other situations that we'll talk about here where the caddy can also help the player in a few other ways. Okay, so the player can only have one caddy at a time. The player can switch caddies, but they can only have one at a time. So there might be certain reasons that they need to switch caddies. They can't purposely switch caddies to get advice from a certain other person in times that they might need it. But a common situation, or one that happened relatively recently, was back at the 2019 Women's Amateur, where the player Gabby Ruffles had her coach as her caddy, but the coach had to catch a flight. I think this was during the finals match, so bad timing on the coach to have to leave. But I think there was illness or death in the family or something like that. But anyways, so the coach left, and then another caddy picked up the bag and finished out the final of the USAM. And she ended up winning, so I guess it was a good story. And then whether or not the player has a caddy, any person who walks or rides along with the player who carries other things for the player, such as a rain suit, umbrella, or food or drink, is not the player's caddy unless he or she is named as such by a player, or also carries or transports or handles the player's clubs. So just because, mom or dad is walking around and holding the player's umbrella and rain suit, that doesn't make them a caddy. They're just carrying that extra stuff for the player, which is allowed. All right, two or more players can share a caddy. We don't typically have that happen a ton in our tournaments, but that is allowed. You see that more at the club level, where you have a caddy that's riding on the back of a cart or something like that, and doing stuff for both players. We can also put a local rule in to limit or put certain restrictions on who the caddy will be. So a good example of that we run into is the U.S. Junior qualifier and the U.S. Girls Junior qualifier that we run. So for those, the players' parents cannot be a caddy. You can have a brother, sister, grandparent, coach, but it cannot be the parent. And then if there's a penalty here, then we'll have the general penalty. During each hole, it applies. And then we'll also, if it happens if the breach happens or continues between two holes, the player gets the general penalty for the next hole. So if they had two caddies while they were walking between hole 3 and 4, they would get the penalty on hole 4.
Kyle, what's the reason for not allowing a parent, just for information?
I'm not entirely certain, but I believe it's because they probably had instances where parents were fighting and got in the way. So now they just let the parents fight on the sidelines and not in the fairways and on the greens. But I don't know for sure on that, but that's my thought on it. I believe that's the case.
Yeah, just like some moms.
That is the reason.
Yep.
In that U.S. Junior Amateur qualifier, how would you go about checking the caddies? I mean, I know I've done some of those, and I've seen an adult caddying for someone, but never did ask, "Are you the parent?" What's your feeling on that? How do we handle that situation?
Starter.
Yeah, so we'll the players agree to that when they sign up through the USGA. They also will get that information sent to them by us in the USGA, letting them know that the parent can't be the caddy. And then at that point, we would we would just, it's kind of similar to like the one ball rule. If we use that for certain events, is that, we're not out there, Dan, checking everyone, but if it gets brought to our attention, then we would look into it.
Okay, thank you.
And then as Marv said, our starter would say something as well on the first tee to make sure that someone didn't start with the caddy that wasn't allowed.
Okay.
Typically, a player or a parent who caddies for their kid in an event where they shouldn't, their kid's probably not that good anyway, so they probably won't qualify. No, I'm just kidding.
But in the GAM events, a caddy could be a parent, right? Just the USGA.
Correct. Yep. So, and that's a good point. So the only restriction on the parent is for the US junior and the girls junior. Any other GAM event that allows caddies or any other USGA qualifier can be a parent. And we definitely see a lot of parents out there for sure. All right. So certain things that a caddy can do. Caddies are allowed to carry, transport, or handle players' clubs. They can search for the player's ball. They can give information, advice, and other help before the stroke is made. They can rake bunkers, smooth bunkers for the care of the course. They can remove sand and loose soil or repair damage on the putting green. They can remove or attend the flag stick. They can now mark the player's ball and lift it and replace it on the putting green. So this was a change in 2019, and that was really put in place because of some customary rules, not the right, but customary traditions in other parts of the world where the caddy would be way ahead, mark the ball, clean it, and put it back on the green so the players would be ready to go when they got there. The caddy can also clean the player's ball, and they can remove loose impediments and movable obstructions. There are a few other things that caddies can do, but only with the player's authorization. Okay, and so in this case here, you see in parentheses it says that this authorization must be given specifically each time. So it can't be a general or a blanket authorization. Say you can do this during the entire round. It needs to happen every time it comes up. So those couple things are restore conditions that were worsened after the player's ball came to rest. When a player's ball is anywhere except on the putting green, you can lift the player's ball under a rule requiring it to be replaced, or after the player has decided to take relief under a rule. Actions that are not allowed. Caddies cannot concede the next stroke or the hole or the match, or agree with the opponent on the score. They can't, like we talked about, deliberately stand on the line or close or an extension of the line. They can't replace a ball unless the caddy had lifted it or moved it. And they can't drop or place the ball in a relief area. So the player needs to do that, player or partner. And then they can't decide to take relief under a rule, such as make it unplayable or penalty area. The caddy can advise the player, but the player must decide. So there's a interpretation on that, or a clarification, I should say. So this I think was added because of a situation that happened at a Corn Ferry Tour, or formerly Love.com, where the caddy went in and they grabbed the ball from some rocks in the penalty area. But previously that was penalty. Now it's so long as it's reasonable to conclude that the player is taking relief under a rule, his or her caddy is treated as being given the authorization to lift the ball and may do so without penalty. So I think in this case, if I remember correctly, there was no way that the player was going to play the ball because it was like lodged in between rocks, or I mean, it was just completely unplayable. And so in that case, they because this was pre-2019, I believe it was a penalty. But now that would not be a penalty if the caddy went in there and grabbed it. But if it was a penalty area and it could be played from there, the caddy can't go in and grab it until the player gives them authorization to do that. Okay, and we said too that the player is responsible for the caddy's actions. Okay, again, this is during the round and also while play is stopped, but not before or after the round. So you just have to worry about your caddy when the tournament's going on. If the caddy's actions breaches a rule or would breach a rule, then the player is going to get the penalty. And then when there's application of a rule depends on whether the player is aware of certain facts. The player's knowledge is treated as including whatever is known by his or her caddy. So when I read this, it's kind of interesting. It says that you need to have a caddy that's somewhat knowledgeable about the rules, but you don't want one that's too knowledgeable about the rules. That's how I interpret this. But all kidding aside, just again, it's important to know that the player is going to be responsible for the caddy's actions and breaches while out there during the round or when play is stopped. All right, any questions on Rule 10 before we move to 11? Okay. All right. So ball in motion accidentally hits a person, animal, object, or deliberate actions to affect the ball in motion. So Rule 11 covers what to do if the player's ball is in motion hits a person, animal, equipment, or anything else on the course. When this happens accidentally, there's no penalty and the player normally must accept the result, whether favorable or not, and play the ball from where it comes to rest. Rule 11 also restricts a player from deliberately taking actions to affect where any ball in motion might come to rest. This rule applies anytime a ball in play is in motion, whether after the stroke or otherwise, except when a ball has been dropped in relief area and has not yet come to rest. In that situation, we'll talk about in Rule 14. Okay, so again, we're talking in these first couple slides here, we're talking about accidental action. Okay, so if it hits a person or an outside influence, there's going to be no penalty to any player. If the player's ball is in motion, this is also true even if the player even if the ball hits the player, the opponent, or any other player, or any of their caddies or equipment. Okay, so this was another rule change in 2019. Was that previously if I hit my own equipment, that was a penalty, or I hit myself, that was a penalty. Now, if it's accidental, there's no problem with that. There's no penalty, and in most cases, we're just going to play it as it lies. Okay, the exception to that is if the ball on the putting green in stroke play, if the ball in motion hits another ball at rest in the putting green, both balls were on the putting green before the stroke, the player gets the general penalty. So I think we've all seen that happen before, where you have two balls in the green, one person doesn't mark it or something like that. The player that putts in that case is going to get the penalty there. Okay, so in this rule, we talk about the outside influence. So the definition of an outside influence is any of these people or things that can affect what happens to a player's ball or equipment or to the course. So any person, including another player, except the player or his or her caddy, or the player's partner or opponents or their caddies. Any animal. So if a dog moves your ball in motion, that's an outside influence. Any natural or artificial object or anything else, including another ball in motion, except for natural forces. So if wind or gravity move your ball, that's not an outside influence. All right, so then the next rule is play the ball as it lies. So I love showing this video, so you'll have to bear with me and watch it. But it's a great video. And the other thing too that's nice about this is that whoever put this video out there is a fellow rules nerd, because you can see that they made the effort to change the terminology to outside influence post 2017. So this person definitely knows what they're doing, and it's not me. So just FYI.
Shooter's ball is in the woods and Happy's on the 18th green, where earlier a car driven by a crazed fan rammed the TV tower. Yeah. Excuse me, I just got to get through. I'm looking for my ball. Golf. Okay. Excuse me. Thank you. Thank you.
Is this your ball?
Yes, it is.
It struck my foot.
Doug! Did I get a drop? Oh, the rule says play it as it lies.
That's two thus far, shooter.
Oh, you can count. Good for you.
And you can count on me waiting for you in the parking lot.
All right, there's the fun for the day. My fun for the day. So you can see there. I mean, it's kind of obviously it's a little bit of it's from a movie, so it's not 100% accurate. We won't make you wear a suit coat when you're the referee as well. You saw that the rules referee that came in. We don't make you wear a coat while you're out there. But again, for the majority of times, we're going to play the ball as it lies if it accidentally hits a person or an outside influence. But there are a couple examples of the or exceptions to that. So in the case there where the ball ends up on any person, animal, or moving outside influence. So in that example there in the video, we would not play the ball off the guy's foot. We would be able to, in that case, since it's in the general area, we would take the point right below that, and we get our 1 club length relief area in which to drop in that case. And if something were to be on the green, and it was resting on something on the green, then instead of dropping it, we would place it right underneath. And you'll see that sometimes too. You'll have a ball that will end up in a trash can or something like that. It's a similar application in that case as well. Okay, the second exception here is when a ball is played from the putting green and accidentally hits any person, animal, or movable obstruction, including another ball in motion. The stroke does not count, and the original ball or another ball must be replaced on the original spot. Okay, except in these 2 cases, ball in motion hits another ball at rest or a ball marker on a putting green. The stroke counts, and we play it as it lies. And then there could be a penalty in that case, potentially. And then the ball in motion accidentally hits the flag stick or the person attending the flag stick. That's covered by Rule 13.2 and not this rule. Okay, and then there's also a recent local rule that's been put in to provide some different options for this. So this talks about any person or animal. So this local rule so model local rule D7 limiting when the stroke made from the putting green must be replayed under that exception.
Okay,
So the player, the exception, except that when the ball played from the putting green accidentally hits the player, the club used by the player to make a stroke, or an animal defined as a loose impediment, that is worms, insects, or similar animals that can be easily removed. So in those cases, the stroke count and the ball must be played as it lies. So this local rule is an option for committees to put in play. I know for USGA qualifiers, it'll be in play. I don't know if we've decided at the GAM if we're going to be putting that in. I would imagine that we would, but I'm sure that we'll talk about that in the last couple sessions after we've decided what's on the hard card and whatnot. But for USGA qualifiers, for sure, this local rule is in play. It's on the USGA's hard card.
Hey, Kyle.
Yep.
In rule school last week, they showed a, can't remember who it was now, but a guy making a putt that the player didn't see it hit like a very small little insect.
Mm-hmm.
The ball went in the hole and he had to replay the shot.
Right.
It hit the ant, I think it was, or just a very small insect.
Right.
You could almost see it only with the video camera, but not by the naked eye.
Right. Right.
So.
Yeah, I forget what player that was, but I do remember hearing about that. I feel like it was Bryson, maybe it wasn't, but
No, it wasn't Bryson. God, who was it? Casey, I think.
okay, yeah, that sounds right. So, but so I think the other thing is like this is talking about the worms or the insects, but that's still if we go back here, that really covers this animal part here,
right?
So if we still we would still have to replay the stroke if it hit a movable obstruction or any person as well.
Right.
And then what about
Dan, make it a little simpler.
Yeah. Dan, what about, and I think maybe they talked about this as well, but doesn't the same thing apply when you have like a leaf that's moving and your ball hits it? You have to replay that as well, correct?
I was looking for that. I never saw that come across.
A leaf is not a leaf is a loose impediment, so you would not replay that shot. The ball is played as it lies. It plays wherever you end up.
Okay.
The exception doesn't fall under that category under the exception, a leaf.
Kyle, I think that might have been pre-2019.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep. Yeah, you're probably, because I do remember it being a penalty at one point, but okay, so they cleared that up. That's good. All right. All right. So now we're going to move into deliberately talking or taking deliberate action. So again, this is going to be on purpose. So this is more of the like Phil Mickelson action. And again, so it's either when a person deliberately touches the ball in motion or the ball in motion hits any equipment or other object, except a ball marker or another ball at rest, or any person that a player deliberately positioned or left in a particular location so that the equipment, object, or person might deflect or stop the ball in motion. Okay. So if I put my bag on the other side of the bunker because I know that every other bunker shot I hit, I stall it, and hoping that it might keep me from, going in the deep rough, then I've got a problem there if my ball ends up hitting my bag in that case. Okay, the player would get a penalty if he or she deliberately deflects or stops any ball in motion. Okay, and then this is true whether it's the player's own ball or a ball played by an opponent or another player. So yeah, general penalty, 2 strokes and stroke play, loss of hole and match play. The exception is that ball moving in water. There's no penalty if a player lifts his or her ball moving in temporary water in a penalty area when taking relief. And again, same thing that we talked about before when we're talking about partner play. When we talk about the player, we are also assuming that that is the side. So the partner and the partner's caddy as well. Okay, so where do we play it from? So we're not going to play it as it lies. We're going to take relief. The player's going to take relief. So anywhere except in the putting green, we're going to estimate where the ball would have come in to rest, and then we're going to place it there. Sorry, we're not going to place it. We're going to on the putting green, we're going to have a one club length area, a relief area in which to drop it. So an example might be you have where maybe you have a spectator that saw a ball going towards a bad area, and they ran and they grabbed, they hit the ball while it was moving and hit it back towards the fairway. We're not going to play it from the fairway. We're going to estimate approximately where that ball would have ended up, and then we'll have one club length relief area in which to drop in there. Okay, if the ball would have come to rest in the putting green, the player is going to place the original ball or another ball on the estimated spot where the ball would have come to rest. And then if the ball was to be coming or was going to go out of bounds, and the player needs to play stroke and distance. So if that same parent or spectator knew the ball was going out of bounds and they jumped and dove and prevented the ball from going out of bounds, that player in that case there is still going to have to take stroke and distance. Okay, if the stroke's made from the putting green, the stroke does not count, and the original ball or another ball must be replaced on its original spot. So I think this is the Phil Mickelson example, where I think it was a couple years ago at the U.S. Open, and he hit the putt and then he went up and hit it while it was moving, deliberately deflected or stopped it. So in that case, he got the 2-stroke general penalty, and then put his ball back where he was and put it out.
This rule also applies to backstopping, doesn't it?
Yes, correct. Yep. So that goes back to, if an object, including another player's ball, was placed there, then the player would get penalized for that too. So if you had, that's a good example. And now as I'm talking through, I think I might return to this Phil example, because I think that one was different now that I think about it. But using your example of the backstop, so if the ball's off the green, and there's a ball on the green, and I'm using it as a backstop, and I hit my shot and it hits your ball, then what do we do, Lee?
Well, you don't do anything if just the ball's hit, you're going to replace the ball that was at rest is going to be replaced, and the other ball plays as it lies. If there was an agreement between the players at some point to, whenever one of their balls were on the green and they agreed that they'd leave it there, then you've got a penalty situation. Or if it can happen more frequently in a partner format.
Right.
One partner says, leave your ball there and I'll putt up or I'll chip up, and they'll stop it if or deflect it or whatever it might be. Then you've got the problems, right?
Yeah, so, well, I think the way I read it is that in that case, if I'm off the green and I know I'm backstopping it, I'm gonna get a penalty. And then I would move your ball back, but then I'm gonna estimate where my ball would have went and place it there on the green. Is that right?
Well, if there was an agreement,
Right. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, let's say that we're for sure backstopping. Like I tell you,
And we're
I-
competitors.
yeah, or
We're not
whatever.
part-
Yeah, I mean, let's just say like I just say, leave the ball there, or I don't say anything, but I know that I'm keeping it there to serve as a backstop. So I hit my chip shot, and then it hits your ball. So it wouldn't, in that case, if I read this right, it would be I would get the penalty. You're okay, and then I would have your ball would go back to where it was, and then I would have to estimate where my ball would have went and place it there on the green if it was going to stay on the green.
Kyle, this is Sue. I don't think that's right. There's a clarification for Rule 15 about that, and it's like was said earlier. There actually has to be an agreement.
Okay.
Well, Kyle, yeah, I mean, the clarification says now, I think it's the player's responsibility not to do backstopping, not just not to agree to it, but not to do it. But I think the right ruling is once you make the agreement, you get a 2-stroke penalty. If you hit the ball, you're going to play it as it lies.
Okay.
Right. If you didn't start on the putting green, if you started on the putting green,
right,
then the putting green rule would apply.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, yeah, I'm getting confused here because this is where like
Well,
I would actually like take the action and hit the ball while I was moving, not at the ball. Yep, you're right.
So backstopping's in Rule 15, right?
Right.
So
Okay. All right. So thanks for your help on that. And John, thanks as well. So forget everything I just said about that. We'll get that more. But yeah, so I guess in that case, we would have a 2-stroke penalty for agreeing to to use as a backstop, but then I would play the ball as it lies. All right, and then I think too, I want to go back on this Phil Mickelson example. I think Phil's is different. So, because I think he didn't he get penalized for playing a moving ball and not necessarily deliberately deflecting or stopping his ball because he actually tried to hit it. So I think there's a difference there. So disregard what I said about Phil Mickelson too. I don't think that's this rule. So typically what you'll see for this 11.2 is when you have someone that, is angry and hits a ball, and when they're not trying to hit a stroke or something like that, or they're pissed off at their opponent or something like that, and they smack their ball, whatever, when it's going towards the hole or whatever. So. All right, 11.3, deliberately moving objects or altering conditions to affect the ball in motion. So when a ball is in motion, a player must not deliberately take any of these actions to affect where the ball might come to rest. So they can't alter physical conditions by taking any of those actions listed in Rule 8.1 that we talked about a few weeks ago. So they can't lift or move a loose impediment or a movable obstruction. So there's a couple higher profile examples of this that happened in the past, but they'd still apply under the current rules. So there was an example where Camilo Villegas hit a shot and the ball was an elevated shot. It went up to the green and it rolled back. And as the ball was coming back, he moved his divot out of the way because the ball was in a similar area. So in that case, there, he's taking an action, a deliberate action to move that loose impediment that might impact where his ball comes to rest. And then the other example was back a little bit longer ago when Corey Pavin's caddy, the ball was going towards the penalty area, and there was a rake there, and the ball was going right at the rake, and it was definitely going to hit the rake, and it was probably actually going to stop the ball from going in the water. But the caddy picked up the rake, and then the ball rolled into the water. And so not only did they get the penalty for going in the water, but they also got a penalty for moving a movable obstruction that might impact the ball. So I think that caddy probably got let go. Maybe not, but that's another scenario where you're not allowed to move a movable obstruction. There are a couple exceptions, as you'll see here. If the flag stick's been removed from the hole and lays on the putting green there, and the ball is moving towards that, a player could pick that up and move it. If there's a ball at rest in the putting green, it could be moved, or it can be marked and moved while another ball is moving. And then also, if there's another player's equipment, maybe there's a cart that's standing stationary, and all of a sudden the ball is going towards that cart. The cart can move and get out of the way. Same way, if there's a bag that might hit the ball player, or someone can move another player's equipment or their bag from getting hit there. But then removing the flag stick from the hole, including attending it, while a ball is in motion, is covered by Rule 13, not by this rule. So when we say a removed flag stick, we're talking about a flag stick that has already been taken out of the hole and is typically laid on the ground somewhere. All right. Any questions on Rule 11? All right. Rule 12, bunkers. So Rule 12 is a specific rule for bunkers, which are specifically prepared areas intended to test the player's ability to play from the sand. To make sure the player confronts this challenge, there are some restrictions on touching the sand before the stroke is made, and on where relief may be taken for a ball in the bunker. Okay, so this is a helpful diagram here that kind of shows a couple examples of when the ball is in the bunker and when it's not in the bunker. Previously, under the rules, there was some more verbiage on how the bunker was "quote unquote" defined, whether up and down, etc. But now there's not as much on that. But basically, you'll see here there's a couple examples where we have obviously the ball that's in the bunker here is in the bunker, and then the one that's on top of the rake but over the sand is in the bunker as well. But then we'll have some bunkers where you might have an area of grass in the middle of a bunker that is in the bunker, and then the one that is the biggest change from previously is this one that the ball is on the earthen lip here, or embedded or on the lip, is not part of the bunker. Okay, so a ball is in a bunker when it touches the sand on the ground inside the bunker, or is inside the edge of the bunker in rest. So that's this example here where it's inside the margin of the bunker and rest on this movable obstruction. It could also be a loose impediment as well. So you'll see that question like on a quiz, or you can get that question if a ball is on top of a leaf in a bunker, is it in the bunker or is it not? You also sometimes you'll see the question of the ball's on top of a scorecard. Is it in the bunker or not? all those cases that the ball's in the bunker there. Okay, and then there, Craig talked about in Rule 2.2 where we have the ball might be touching both the bunker and another area of the course, and we have to just determine what part of the golf course the ball is in. And typically, you'll see that most frequently when the ball is when you have a bunker that's near the edge of a penalty area, and you'll have maybe a red line that's drawn in the sand. In that case, if the ball is touching the red line, the ball is going to be in the penalty area, not in the bunker there. I believe so. I actually should double check that. Penalty area bunker. Yep, that's right. Okay. So I think most everyone's aware of some of the changes that happened a couple years ago with playing a ball in a bunker. You know, we can now remove loose impediments. Again, provided that it doesn't cause the ball to move. So if we have a leaf that's underneath the ball, if we move the leaf and the ball doesn't move, no problem. But if we move that leaf and the ball moves, or the twig or whatever, then we're going to have a penalty and we have to put the ball back there. It'll be a 1-stroke penalty. Okay, but there are some things that you know we still can't ground our club or touch sand. That might help us determine or help our next shot. So we talked about a little bit about that. We talked about that caddy at the USAM last year who touched the sand and got a penalty for that. So that we can't do that. We also cannot. So let's see here. Player must not. We also can't take a practice swing. And we also can't touch the sand when we're taking our backswing as well. With our club, if we do that, we're going to have a penalty as well. Okay, but there are some things that we can, or some things that we can touch when we're touching the sand. We can obviously take our stance. We can dig in a little bit, so not a problem there. We can't build a stance, but we can, you know, do a little shake there to get our feet a little set in there. We can always smooth the bunker to care for the course. We can place clubs, equipment, or other objects in the bunker, whether by throwing them or setting them down. So a lot of times you'll get a question like, can I take clubs in the bunker? Or you might have a player deciding between hitting 3 clubs and they take them all, and then they can lay those clubs they don't use down in the sand. That's not a problem. They wanted to, whenever I do some high school rule seminars, I always tell the kids that they can take their push cart and just go right up in the bunker, and they always get a kick out of that. But no problem there. If they want to do that, we don't encourage it, but that's not a problem. They can also touch the sand if they're measuring, marking, or lifting, or replacing the ball, or any actions under a rule. They can lean on a club if they're just doing it to rest or to stay balanced or to prevent a fall. And you can strike the sand in frustration or anger. Again, just keep in mind that hopefully you do that after the ball has exited the penalty area. Just keep in mind that there are penalties, etiquette penalties as well for doing that. I believe a couple of years ago, Sergio was DQ'd from a tournament for doing that multiple times. So it's not a penalty under the rules of golf, but there still could be an etiquette penalty for those kind of actions.
Kyle?
Yeah.
So I hit a shot from the bunker and it stays in the bunker and in frustration, I slap the sand, that's no longer a penalty. It's not grounding my club. Correct?
Correct, yes. Yep.
Right, so now I go up and I play my shot again, and it finally comes out, then I'm free to do whatever. But
Correct, yeah, you're right, yeah.
right, but that in frustration or anger, if I'm a little ticked off at myself for not getting it out the first time and I slap the sand, it's no longer a penalty, which it used to be.
Right, correct, yeah. So yeah, that's correct. Good catch there. Because I think I said differently. Yeah, even if the ball stays in the bunker, it's not a penalty.
Correct. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Kyle, before we move on from that, I recall a situation I had in the junior AM at Washtenaw. Player made a poor bunker shot, but the ball was outside the bunker, and he lined up and took a practice swing. Would GAM consider my situation as like a pace of play warning? And would we consider Dan's situation as conduct?
Yeah, so that's good questions. We'll start with Dan Longois. A couple of Dan's asking the question, but so in the anger situation, I mean that would definitely be something that we would want to let the player know. I think too a lot of it is just how angry the hit is. If we're just talking about a little flick of the wrist and they whereas if they wind up and they take a big chunk, that's a whole different thing. So in that last case, I would say that we would want to talk to the player and say, please don't do that. In your example, I think a lot of times it's just going to depend on the position of that group. If they're in position and there's really nothing, they don't need to play any faster, or they're waiting in the group in front of them, probably wouldn't say anything. If they were behind and that player had been slow, we'd had some bad times in that player, then we definitely would say, please don't do that. Like, you need to move on to your next shot type thing. But again, no penalty for once the ball is out of it, the player can take that practice swing for sure. Okay, so as Dan Kunert was saying there, is that after a ball is played out of the bunker, and it's outside the bunker, the player can touch the sand without restriction, smooth the sand, and then if this is true, even if the player is required to come back to the bunker under stroke and distance. Okay, so I think we talked about this a few weeks ago, but if I skull at OB and I know I'm gonna have to come back in that bunker and play it again, I can still rake the bunker and smooth that out before I play my next shot.
Hey, Kyle.
Yeah.
Going back to 12-2B, number 2, it says leaning on a club to rest, stay balanced, or prevent a fall. That's allowed even before the shot, or is that after the shot?
Yeah, so that's before and after that was a change for 2019.
And yet, didn't they penalize one of the guys for going in and touching the sand just recently in one of the tournaments?
Well, so I know it happened at the USAM or at the end of last August or whenever that was. But I think the difference there is that when you're touching the sand, you're usually what they say, testing the condition. So you're trying to determine if it's soft or if it's hard or whatever. Whereas if you're just using it to rest or to stay balanced, you're not really doing that. If you're touching it to rest, but you're really doing it to figure out how soft the sand is, and then that's a different story. But really what they're just talking about is someone that's just casually just happens to put their club in the ground and they're just holding it like they don't even think about what they're doing.
Okay, thanks.
I think you get into deliberate versus accidental as well.
Right.
The guy from USAM actually went in deliberately, touched that sand with his hand to test it, as opposed to just standing there casually.
Right. Yep.
Dave, wasn't the recent touching the sand on Kyle's buddy Patrick Reed and his backswing? He moved the sand. Is that what you're thinking about?
No, it was somebody that went into the bunker and they touched it with their hand. One of the Caddies players went in and
That was in the USAM there where the guy was clearly touching the sand.
Yeah.
It tested.
Definitely.
Patrick Reed tests the condition of the sand every time he goes in, for sure. But no, I'm just kidding. I don't hate Patrick Reed, so I don't necessarily like him, but I don't hate him. All right. Rule 12.3 or 12.3 here. Specific rules for relief for a ball in a bunker. So when a ball is in a bunker, specific rules may apply. So we have a couple of scenarios here where if we have interference from an abnormal course condition, we're going to have a different or a special set of rules for that. If there is interference by a dangerous animal condition, and then also if the ball's unplayable. So in these cases, they're not all the same, but basically, what a good kind of basic understanding is that in these cases, there are going to be restrictions where the ball is going to stay in the bunker. However, you'll be able to go out of the bunker. It's just going to cost you more. So in some cases, the relief inside the bunker is free. In other cases, it's going to cost you one penalty. But in the cases where you go out of the bunker, it's going to cost you more. So whether it's free to one stroke or one stroke to two stroke, and we'll talk about those when we cover rules 16 and 19. All right. Guess we'll just keep going on the putting green unless people want to stop. So, all right, putting green. So we'll do a little bit of this and then we'll maybe do a quiz or something like that.
Hey, Kyle.
Yeah.
A little side note about leaning on your club in a bunker. That situation was also true, and I had to call a penalty on a high school match a long time ago. One of the kids was in a yellow penalty area, and he was actually laughing at this other kid that took 4 strokes to get out of a bunker. And after we went up there and added up all the strokes, I called him over and I said, you might have thought that's funny, but you also got a general penalty for leaning on your club in the penalty area. And but that rule has changed also. So just a little side note, you can also rest your club in a penalty area now also.
Right. Yep.
I can tell a story today. I guess Mick's not on here, so that's my short story.
Yeah, I'm sure you got plenty of those stories out there. So.
Oh, they're
No
very
comment.
interesting.
Oh,
They're
you're here.
very interesting.
Oh, I didn't know you were here. Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. I'm out of here. Oh my gosh.
Nick's Claude Rains, the Invisible Man.
All right, rule 13, so putting green. So just like we had a specific rule for bunkers, we have a specific rule for putting greens here. They're specifically prepared for playing the ball along the ground, and there is a flag stick for the hole on each putting green. So certain different rules apply here than for other areas of the course. So that if you really think about like that statement, when we talk about areas where we can replace or things that damage that we can replace in the putting green, we can do that on the putting green, but not in other places because it is made to be a place where the ball can roll along, and we want to make it as equitable as possible for the golfer that plays at 8 a.m. And for the golfer that plays at 2 p.m. So there are certain things that we're going to be able to do on putting greens only because they're designed to be, prepared for the ball actually rolling on them. Okay. All right. So when is the ball touching the green? It's touching if it's touching any part of the green. Okay. So, or if it lies on or in anything such as a loose impediment or an obstruction and is inside the edge of the putting green. So sometimes we'll have situations, especially early on in the year, where it's difficult to tell with some of the growth from the winter what is on the putting green or not. In that case, it's always a good rule of thumb to be a little bit more, generous to players. If we're not 100% sure, then it's probably best to just assume that it's on the green. But unless we for sure can tell that it's not on the green, if it's close, then let's just give the player the benefit of the doubt there. Okay, and then I think, as everyone knows, if the ball is on the putting green, we can lift that ball without restriction. We can clean it. But we do need to mark the spot of the ball before we lift it, and it needs to be put back on its original spot. Okay, so during a round and while play is stopped, a player can take these two actions no matter whether the ball is on the putting green or off the putting green. So again, it's just these things matter as to where, if they're on the putting green or off the putting green, not where your ball is. So if there's sand and loose soil on the green, you can remove those, but again, not on the fringe. So if it's in the fringe, even though you might be using your putter, you cannot remove those things, but on the green you can. And then there's also a bunch of damage that we can repair on the green, but again, not elsewhere. So our infamous ball mark or embedded ball that we like to talk about, if that ball is embedded on the green, we just simply mark the spot, fix the embedded mark, and then we can place the ball right back on it. But if we have that embedded ball mark and it's in our line of play, just off the green, and that pitch mark is on the fringe, we're not going to be able to fix that, with one exception that Craig can help explain to you. And then we can repair this damage by using anything, our foot, a tee, any kind of divot repair tool or anything like that. And we need to make sure that we're doing it without delaying play. So as I think a lot of you know, you can repair spike marks, things like that. But we don't want to be tapping down like every little imperfection all the way to the hole. And we can't take forever to do that. All right. But if there is a penalty though, if the player improves the putting green by taking actions that exceed what's reasonable. Okay. And then damage on the putting green means any damage caused by a person or an outside influence, such as a ball mark, shoe spike marks. If there's a scrape from a flag, or Sergio Garcia is playing in front of you and he hits the green, or I guess now it's Nate Lashley. We can get mad at him for hitting the green. But if Nate left a imperfection in there, you could fix that. Animal tracks or hoof indentations are now fixable. Before you had to put a local rule in. Old hole plugs, those have always been able to be fixed. And then embedded objects as well. If you have an embedded acorn, you can pull that out there and remove the damage from that. But keep in mind that damage on the putting green doesn't include normal maintenance practices. So if they're aerating the greens or they're doing a verticut or whatever, those holes cannot be fixed. There are certain situations where we would have a local rule to allow the player to move the ball out of a aeration hole, but that's not something that can be fixed. And then any other natural imperfections. So early in the spring, when we have areas of bad grass growth around the edge, if those aren't defined by the committee as ground to repair, then those would be areas that you can't fix as well. And then we also have the natural wear of the hole. So we won't deal with this a ton because we always ask the golf course to cut our holes fresh. But if you're playing a golf course that maybe cuts their holes twice a week, the natural wear of the edge of the hole can't be fixed. But if it's obviously if something of a pitch mark hits the hole and hits the edge, you can fix that. Or if someone accidentally nicks the edge with a flag stick, you can fix that. All right, there are two specific rules for when a ball or a ball marker moves on the putting green. If it's accidental, we're not going to have a penalty. We're just going to put the ball back where it was. Okay, so we're just going to place the ball in the original spot. Or if the ball marker moves, we'll just move the ball marker back to where it was. Okay, the exception though is that the ball must be played as it lies when the ball begins to move during the backstroke. Or a stroke that is made. Okay, and then we have another situation there if the player, the opponent, deliberately lifts the player's ball or ball marker. There's another rule to determine if there's a penalty in that case. Okay, so anytime it's accidental, we're just going to move it back. Okay, but if the ball's moved by natural forces, then we're gonna, most times we're going to play it from where it comes to rest. However, that really depends on if the ball has been lifted, marked and lifted already. So if the ball has already been lifted and replaced, then the wind or other natural forces, gravity, cause the ball to move. We're going to take the ball and put it back where it was. If the ball has not been lifted and replaced, marked, lifted, and replaced, then we're going to play it from where the wind or gravity took it. So what I always tell people is that if your ball is on a downhill slope on the green, don't mark it. And if your ball is on an uphill slope, mark it. Because if it's windy out and the ball blew towards the hole and you hadn't marked it, you would just play it from where it comes to rest. Okay, and just like the bunkers, we can't deliberately test the greens here. So certain things that we can't do, we can't rub the surface of the green, we can't roll a ball. You'll see sometimes players will, especially on greens that might have some grain, you'll see players kind of rub their hands on the green. That's not allowed to do that. Okay, but between the play of two holes, you can do that. So that's not a problem, except if there's a local rule that prohibits the practice on putting greens of the hole just completed. All right, let's move on to wrong green here. So wrong green is if the player hits the ball and ends up on a green that's not the green that they're playing. So if you look at, there's a definition for wrong green in the book. It's on page 366. So it also includes any practice putting greens or putting greens for any previous holes as well. So in some cases, we will mark certain areas, certain practice areas as wrong greens, or even parts of greens as wrong greens. So if you have like a double green at like a St. Andrews or something like that, or if we have an event at U of M on the 6th hole there, we typically have we make a distinction for a wrong green for certain parts depending on where the hole is that day. But if a player cannot play from a wrong green without getting a penalty, so that also goes for if their area of stance or swing is impacted by the ball as well, they need to take relief. So not just the stance, but also not just the ball, but also their swing and stance. So we're going to take relief. We're going to find our nearest point of complete relief. So if you're not 100% sure what that is, again, the nearest point of complete relief is when you take your stance and you won't have any interference with your stance, your swing, or your live ball. And then after you take the club that you're most likely to hit in that scenario, so maybe it's a pitching wedge, you'll take your stance, put your club down, and then where that ball would be is where you put the tee. That's your reference point. And then you have one club length no closer to the hole in which to drop in. And there's a couple limits there for the relief area. It's got to be in the same area as the course, can't be closer to the hole. And again, we need to have complete relief from interference, so no stance, swing, or ball interference from that spot. It's really important that we all know the nearest point of complete relief. So if you're new, I would highly recommend reading that over and over again, because as I think many people have pointed out, and a lot of those, the Andy McPhees and Sluggers and all the other guys that have recently retired, they've all said that the most common mistaken rule is taking your nearest point of complete relief, typically around like a cart path, but it could be ground and repair as well. So really study that, really know that you need to find that reference point. And then you get a club length from there. It's not one club length, it's one club length from the reference point. So make sure you understand that. And we'll talk more about that too in future sessions as well.
Hey, Kyle.
Yep.
One of the things, I think this is where you get into the situation where your ball could be in the rough in the general area, but you could take your nearest point of relief could put you into the fairway, and that's still the general area, right? So you could then be able to drop in the fairway as opposed to having to stay in the rough. But if you're in the bunker, you're in the bunker. If you're in the penalty area, you're in the penalty area to take your relief in there.
Correct. Yeah. So when it says that it must be in the same area of the course there, you can't go from, the rough to the bunker or a penalty area. It needs to be in that general area.
Correct.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point. So. All right. And then if there's no relief, or when no relief is clearly unreasonable, because they take a stance or they take a swing that's just not realistic, then the player's not going to get relief under that scenario. So you may see a player take a weird stance or something like that because there's a tree in their way or something like that, and if they got relief, they wouldn't have that tree there. If the stance or direction of play is clearly unreasonable, you would not give them relief. And that same concept will apply when we talk about, taking relief from a cart path or other abnormal course conditions as well. Okay, and then there can be a local rule that the committee adopts to deny relief from a wrong green if it only interferes with the stance. Typically, that's not done, but that is allowed. And if another question too that, always comes up, or I shouldn't say always, but sometimes comes up too, is that if a player just hits from the wrong green or doesn't take relief, it's not something that they need to go back and fix. They're just going to get the general penalty there, and they're going to get a 2-stroke penalty. So if they take a big divot from the middle of the green, they don't need to go back and replay it. Just take the 2-stroke penalty and move on. All right. We're going to stop here because I hate the flag stick and I need to study more before I talk to you guys about it. But we can do a quiz. And a couple quiz questions. So from some, thanks to Lee, I was able to get out and learn a few things about the rules last week. So Lee, thanks for doing that last week. We had a situation at this event that I was at where we had the player, or they were playing lift clean in place, or preferred lies. And there was a question about, this kind of goes back to Dan, your comment here. So player's ball was just outside the bunker, but within their relief area would have allowed them to move the ball into the bunker. So the question I got was, well, can I take my lift clean in place and put it in the bunker? And the answer is no, just like we talked about there, it needs to stay in the same area of the course. So they couldn't go from the rough into the bunker in that case.
So Kyle, I have a question for you on that. Did they mark every time they picked up the ball?
Yeah.
Because if the ball's not being replaced on the exact spot, then you don't have to mark it, correct?
I believe that's correct. Yes, if it's not on the exact spot. Yeah,
right.
And I guess I should say too that they played lift clean in place, not lift clean and replace. So it wasn't the exact spot. They had to put it back on.
Right.
Yeah, so I believe that's correct. They wouldn't necessarily need to mark it in that situation. And the other question that I ran into was if we had the player's ball that was in the penalty area and there was a stone that was embedded in the ground, and they were wondering if they got relief from that. So what's the answer for that?
Embedded in the penalty area?
It's not a loose impediment.
Yeah. So because it wasn't a loose impediment, they couldn't move it. If it was loose, they could have moved it. The other question was in the same penalty area, had the ball and the penalty area line. It might be easier for me to draw this. The penalty area line was right here, and the ball was right here, and the curb was raised about 3 inches here. And so the player wanted to know if their swing hit this raised curb, if they got relief. And what's the answer to that?
The ball lies in the penalty area?
The ball's in the penalty area.
Oh, in the penalty area?
Yeah, it's in the penalty area. Here's the green.
There are no obstructions in a penalty area.
No relief.
No relief from obstructions when your ball's in a penalty area. Yeah. So, all right. Hopefully we have different answers or different questions today. All right. In match play, player A lies 6, 3 feet from the hole, and player B lies 6, 10 feet from the hole. Before B plays his next stroke, A asks how many strokes B has taken. B does not reply until after he holes his putt for a 7. A misses his putt for a 7 and then requests a ruling regarding B's failure to inform as to the number of strokes taken. The committee should rule that A wins the hole, B wins the hole is halved, and B is disqualified from the match for actions contrary to the spirit of the rules.
He wins all.
B wins the hole.
B.
Okay.
B. B wins the hole.
Yeah. Yep.
B.
All right. A and B are playing a singles match. At the 7th hole, B hits his tee shot 70 yards into the area of tall grass. After searching for 1 minute, B states that he is going to return to the teen area to play a provisional. After B plays again from the teen area, A finds B's ball within 3 minutes of the start of search. B picks up his second ball and plays his original ball onto the green. A scores 6 in the hole. B takes 2 putts to finish the hole for a total of 4 strokes. Before either player makes a stroke from the next tee, A questions B's actions and requests a ruling. What is the ruling? A wins the hole, B wins the hole is halved. Both A and B are disqualified.
A wins the hole.
A wins the hole.
And why does A win the hole?
B hit a wrong ball, so he's disqualified from the hole.
Okay.
And he found the ball within 3 minutes. Yeah, that's B was trying to play
B's
it
second
provisional.
ball was in play because he played it off the tee, took a stroke off the tee. So when he picked it up, he loses the hole.
No,
They played a provisional ball.
he played a provisional.
B,
Oh, I'm
B-
sorry. I'm sorry. I missed that wording.
Yeah, B wins the hole.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I thought it was stroke and distance. My bad.
That's all right. So yeah, because he's hitting provisional here, if he finds it within the 3 minutes, that's the ball in play,
Right.
right? I think at least we'll find out for sure. All right, A and B are partners in a 4-ball match. A lot of match play questions today. A's ball is on the putting green 30 feet from the hole. B's ball is 20 feet from the hole on a similar line. To assist him with his own putt, B stands on an extension of the line of putt behind A's ball while A putts. What is the ruling? Since B only stood there to help himself, there is no penalty to either player. A was in breach of Rule 10.2B by allowing B to stand there. A has no score that can count for the side on the hole. B is not penalized. B was in breach of rule by standing behind. B has no score that can count. A is not penalized. And B was not there to help him in his play. As B was not there to help him in his play, A was in breach of Rule 10.2. Since his breach helped B, B receives the same penalty. The side has no score that can count for the hole and loses the hole. That's a hard one.
A and B lose the hole.
Yeah, I think it's the last one.
It is the last.
Yeah.
Both the last one.
Go with the last one. And we're looking at 4-ball match. So it's Rule 22 or 23.
Yeah, that's in 23, Kyle.
Yeah, so there's a list of things in 23 that talks about these scenarios where you have a breach that is either applied to the side or to the individual player. All right, and which one of the following has the player proceeded without getting a penalty for practice during the round? In 4-ball stroke play, he is holed out for 5 and hits a practice putt on the side of the green before his partner who was putted for 4 finishes the hole. Prior to playing, makes his second stroke from the fairway. He makes a stroke at a plastic golf ball. Taking a practice swing in the rough, the player dislodges a concealed range ball. The committee suspends play for darkness. The group finishes putting out on the 9th hole. The next morning, his group will be second to play from the 10th teen area. After play is resumed, the player hits a few more balls in the driving range before heading to the 10th tee.
C.
The third one, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So he just hits that other ball. It's not practice or anything like that. So no issues there. In 4-ball match play, A and B are partners. A goes out in 4 strokes. B lies 2 on the fringe of the putting green. Both their opponents C and D have holed out in 4. While B plays a stroke from the fringe, a caddy stands on the extension of the line of play behind B's ball to block distractions. B holds his 3rd stroke. What is the ruling? The hole is halved. A and B win the hole. C and D win the hole. A and B are disqualified.
A.
A.
So player B is going to get the 2-stroke. But we're going to.
It's match play though. So that'd be loss of hole.
But A's already in the hole, right?
He's already in for 4.
Yep.
So only B is disqualified in this case?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just B would be DQ'd for that. Because there's a distinction when the action can help the play of the partner, and so in this case, because he's already holed out, the action doesn't help him. So it just applies to the player in that case. All right, in stroke play, a player's tee shot comes to rest within the edge of a red penalty area, but not in the water. The player makes a stroke at the ball and dribbles it down the bank into the water and cannot be played. He drops another ball in the bank within the penalty area in the proper relief area. Oh, geez. He decides not to play again from that lie and drops a 3rd ball within 2 club lengths of and not near the hole from the estimated point where his original ball last crossed the edge of the penalty area. He plays from there. For this series of events, how many penalty strokes has the player gotten? One, 2, 3, or 4?
4.
Well, Kyle, I'm confused by this wording. It says he drops another ball within the penalty area in the proper relief area for 17.1D.
Right.
Yeah.
Should
In
be
the penalty area is not the proper relief area for 17.1, is it?
Well, so no, what it's saying is that because he was in the penalty area and he just dribbled it farther in there, and so he's going back and playing where he last played from,
which would be 18.
No, this is the regression rule.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, but inside the penalty area
Right. Wouldn't be
is
regression.
not the proper relief area for 17.1.
Right.
Right? The relief area is outside the penalty area.
Playing stroke and distance there, John.
Yeah. You
17.1D is not stroke and distance.
Right.
Option 1 is.
Stroke and distance, because you can go back to where you last played from, which is inside the penalty area.
Okay, got it.
Yep. So we got that penalty. The stroke and distance penalty is 1, and then he gets another penalty for taking the outside. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
2. Okay. In stroke play, a player arrives at the first tee 3 minutes late for a starting time because another player slipped and has hit his head in the locker room. The player called 911 and administered first aid until the paramedics arrived. The committee should rule that the player gets no penalty, gets a 2-stroke.
Yeah, A.
The answer would be different if the player was just late without administering first aid and calling 911. If it's not an emergency situation, the player's going to get the 2-stroke penalty in that case, with the exception if the first tee is not clear to play. All right. In stroke play, a player's tee shot is known to have come to rest in an area of ground and repair and was not found after a 3-minute search. He plays another ball from the tee, which came to rest nearby but outside the same area of ground and repair. The player then realized he could have proceeded under Rule 16.1E without penalty. He lifts the second ball, played from the tee, drops another ball in accordance with Rule 16.1, and then takes 3 strokes from there. So we've got, so for those of you that ever want to figure this out, there's a trick that you'll learn. Rule score, some people will tell you, but you have a strokes and a penalty strokes T-bar here.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got the first shot is 1 stroke. Okay, and then they go back and he doesn't find his ball within 3 minutes, so that's a penalty stroke. And he hits his next shot off the tee. And then we know, then he has all this other crap, but we know he hits 3 strokes from there. So we're going to add 3 here. Then the question is, what about the penalty strokes for picking the ball up in play and substituting another ball?
2 penalty strokes.
He gets 2 for playing from a wrong place.
Yeah.
Okay, so then that equals 8. Is that right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In stroke play, player A marks and lifts his ball from the putting green so that player B, whose ball is also on the putting green but farther from the hole, can play first. While B's ball is in motion, A, trying to speed up play, replaces his ball and starts evaluating his line of putt. B's ball strikes A's ball, and B's ball is deflected into the hole. What is the ruling?
I hope it never happens.
A gets no penalty and must replace his ball. B gets no penalty and must replace stroke. A gets no penalty and must replace his ball. B gets no penalty and the ball is hold. A gets no penalty and must replace his ball. B gets a 2-stroke penalty and must replay the stroke. A gets no penalty and must replace the ball. B gets a 2-stroke penalty and the ball is hold. So both balls are on the green, right?
At the time that B hit, was A in play or out of play?
Both on the green.
Yeah, A's ball wasn't on the green at the time because he marked it and he put it back in play after once the ball was in motion.
Yeah, Kyle, the exception says both balls were on the putting green before the stroke.
Right. So then, John, you think there's no penalty to both
I think
players?
there's no penalty. And
Okay, but then does the ball get replayed or does the ball hold for B? Let's go with A here.
I think the ball's gonna be holding it.
You think it's gonna be hold? Okay.
Ball will be played as it lies, which is in the hole, so I think the ball gets.
Right, I think it's hold.
All right, in stroke play, a player's tee shot came to rest in the penalty area, close to a stake marking the edge of the area. He played the ball, avoiding the stake, and then realized he was entitled to remove the stake as it was a movable obstruction. He then invoked Rule 20.1C, electing to score with the second ball. He dropped another ball in the penalty area and played it. He holed out with both balls, not counting any penalty strokes. He scored 6 with the first ball and 8 with the second. He reports the facts to the committee before returning his scorecard. His score for the hole was
6.
Okay. Yep. So in that case, he really
6. Yeah.
he really shouldn't have played 2 balls because you have to say you're going to play 2 balls before taking an action. But he did report the facts to the committee, so he's not DQ'd. So he's going to score with that first one. All right, let's see how we did. Oh man, Good job. All right. We got all of them right.
Stepping up your game.
Yeah. I was Craig, you saved us on that question 9 there. So I'm gonna have to study that one a little closer, but
Thanks, Kyle.
all right. Appreciate you guys. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Carl.
Next
Yeah,
week.
thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks.
Thanks, Kyle.
See you guys.
Take care, Kyle.
All right.
Thank you. See you later.
Thanks.
Yep.
See you next week.
All right.
Kyle, rules we should look at for next week?
Huh?
Which rules should we begin to look at for next week?
We're gonna go 13, and we'll finish up 13, and we'll probably get into 14. So,
all right, thank you.
Yeah, 14's probably the most important rule in the book.
Thank you.
Yep. (11.1b). Interesting.